Hi, Steve Patterson here. I wanted to sort of set the stage for a series of conversations I'm going to be having over the next couple of weeks with people on different aspects of what we call consciousness. But before I do that, what I would like to do prior to these 5 sessions with these people is to lay the foundation of what it is I'm going to be talking about as far as my approach to what I call foundational emergent consciousness, which is very, very deep understanding, you might say, without trying to sound too much about it, in addressing what it is we're talking about when we say the word consciousness. Now, consciousness itself is used in a wide variety of ways, like so many things, and it is aptly applied to all these things because they all are expressed within consciousness. But with the sort of the space that I'm referring to here, that I refer to as foundational, and I'll get to why I say that in a minute, is based a lot on scientific explanations that we have available to us that show certain things are demonstrable. In other words, they've proven that it's true. They've shown it, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second as I do a reductionist method of getting to the foundation of which I'm speaking here. And so the reason I want to do this is because all of the things of these 5 upcoming conversations take place within this consciousness that I'm speaking of, this foundational consciousness, which is a necessary element of all. And so that I want to address now, what I mean by that. But first we have to understand, we have to ask the question, what is consciousness, right? Consciousness in its most basic form could be looked at as experience, that we experience consciousness as something that is real to us in the world. We have this conscious experience of life, of us. You know, there's so many layers up from that. From the moment we first wake up in the day till we compile the knowing of who we are, our name, where we're at, all that stuff, right? That is consciousness coming to us, all right? And so what we need to also step away from here is any other associations of consciousness that we might have in our own knowing, you could say. What we already believe, what we already know when you hear consciousness, what that is. What we're talking about here is what's even sort of below all of those considerations. And so to do that, science has come up with an approach to getting there. And this is a relatively new space, even in science. It really didn't even get going until the 1990s with the arrival of chaos theory and quantum mechanics. And so since that time, they've had a way that they can literally prove these structures. They can now mathematically show these systems of energy that heretofore were just theories in quantum theory. It was proven and became demonstrable. And so as a result of that, we've had a bunch of people that have been doing this kind of thing, but even that is a relatively small group, and really only in the last few years. I had a video that I posted on my Facebook page earlier, I think it was yesterday maybe, and it's from David Chalmers. He's a analytical philosopher and probably the leading mind in this field as far as I personally am concerned, because the way that he addresses what I'm about to talk about, and I'm going to use his model basically, because what happened with me personally was that I've worked in this field in a way for decades now. And what I mean by that is that all of my experience has been working with people in a way that creates some kind of reality, whether it has been a drug and alcohol counselor in trying to change the way that we address reality and what we choose and things like that, to back when I was working in media and I worked with speaking on the radio. I was on Sirius Satellite. I had my own show. I had, not on Sirius Satellite, but I had my own podcast show. And of course I was a writer in those days. So everything was done with the understanding of knowing the impact this is going to have on the person. So I've been in that space. And the model I pretty much had about that when I entered into spirituality about 15 years ago, you could say, in the way that I am now, what happened there was I had a deepening understanding of consciousness now with the thing that I named consciousness. And I understood what that meant now. I'd heard it before, but now I had this other appreciation of it. But in the esoteric side, this sort of nonlinear side of things, and I'll get to that in a second, when we talk more about the scientific part, now we're in this other, those spaces, they resolve down to an abstract space of unknowing that they just sort of have to take for granted. And what I mean by that is that you reach a point where there's, say, the extent of reality and spirituality would be, say, God, right? And creation. Well, that's that. That's as far as you can go in spirituality at that point, because you can't question the existence of God as if he had parents or anything. Science is a different thing. They get to a demonstrable point. They reach an end point, and then it becomes proven, right? And so that's facts. That's different. And so what this was able to happen, like I said, in the mid-90s, when chaos theory and all this stuff came along, and briefly, the reason I mention chaos theory so often is because it also comes with a very easy way to explain. In linear dynamics, you have a this and a that, right? This is the whole Newtonian paradigm. This is all of physics. This is all of that stuff, right? We have matter going matter and matter, and then we have energy created, right? These are foundational things in physics. Foundational means you don't go below it. Foundational basis of the universe in physics would be matter, time, and space, right? Those were the three for the whole Newtonian paradigm. Matter, time, and space. From there, everything evolves. Or emerges, we'll say. Not evolves, emerges. And so then what happens is later on, and this is talked about in the video below, later on they arrive at this whole thing of magnetism. So now instead of having a this and a that in a process that generates energy, right? Now you have fields of influence, things that come in that are different than a this and a that straight line. So then that was the beginning of the idea of attractors, things that make things happen that can't be demonstrated. Chaos theory proved attractors, right? And that's where we have the law of attraction, which, whatever way you've heard it maybe phrased in some healing or some whatever, that's their interpretation of what this attractor here I'm talking about. This isn't a linear space or something happens and it creates an attraction over time, and eventually it pops, right? Or it does whatever. It explains things like the albino happening in human reproduction. And you might have one in 1 year, then you don't have one for 22 years, and you have 3 in 5 days. I mean, you can't tell. So how do you do that? That is chaos theory was seeking to address why there can be a noticeable pattern with no provable. It's a random pattern. You can't mathematically prove when it's going to happen. Chaos theory, they came up with algorithms that were able to do that, and what we have is the fractal image. And what a fractal image is a perfect illustration on a computer screen of this mathematical process, this algorithm just keep going. And if you look at a fractal, what's happening is it's all emerging from the same thing perfectly, but without any predictability whatsoever. They can't tell what it's going to do next. It just keeps doing that. That's attractors, and that's nonlinear dynamics. That led to quantum mechanics, or I'll put mathematics on quantum now, so we have quantum mechanics, right? So getting back below that now. So now that I've established all that as far as linear dynamics and foundational, the reason I want to talk about what I call foundational emergent consciousness would be that what we don't know is if we say, okay, in physics, down at the base, we have these three foundational things. We have matter, we have time, and we have space, then we have this magnetism, and then this energy is created by this motion, right? So that's the foundations of the universe in physics. Well, if that's the case, everything works, right? Everything's here. All these things, all this, the computer screen, me, you, everything, right? But there is me and you. That's different. That's conscious experience of me and you. We have no way to know if this cup knows it's a cup. We can't know that. We're not a cup. We're humans. Whatever that is, we can explain that out of all the physics, right? Because physics gives rise to all the rest of it, and chemistry and all the other things that lead to biology. And we understand in neuroscience, we understand how it all works in the brain. We got it. We got it all figured out in math, right? That's why we have AI. We were able to map that out in our own mind in this way and mimic behavior. And so we have AI going. And AI is getting really close to having feelings. I mean, that's the space they don't have yet, but they will. One day, AI will fall in love. Yeah, then think of the questions on that. Do you shut it off? Are you killing consciousness? Weird questions there in AI. But back to why we're talking about this. So what you have now, and where did I go off on to the AI? We have, okay, so everything is repetitious thing in the universe based on these 4 now emergent platforms of foundational things of physics, right? Well, why then do we have experience? What is the value of the conscious experience? Because that same process that makes the cup makes me too, all of me, the air, the universe, the entirety of it, right? Now we are getting a little bit below foundational when I said it like that. I'll address that in a bit because I just threw out the universe as being in existence too there. I realized I did that. There is that's an even grayer space. We'll get to that in a second. But so here's the deal. If we can assume, and this is what Chalmers says, and this is the way that I was already sort of there, but I didn't have this language for it, and that's why I use it. If we assume then that somehow consciousness is foundational, if we ask a really radical question like that, says consciousness itself, we don't understand what it is because we have no foundation for it, because it is not necessary for life, right? We're alive. Are they alive? So how is that? What is the value then of consciousness? And nobody can answer that. Nobody in spirituality you can, because you get to the point where you just have to take it. You have to agree upon it. Not so in science. And what we're talking about here is analytical philosophy, this kind of approach of using science with philosophy. It's called analytical philosophy. So when I say that I study emergent foundational consciousness, what I'm seeking to understand is what is the value of the conscious experience in and of itself at that foundational basis, if it in fact is foundational. Because we don't have any other place we can put it. It does not fit anywhere in physics, because the entirety of physics runs on this automatic machine that is everything. And I'll call it a machine just because it's easy to understand in that sort of building emergent thing that eventually becomes tailorized to things like evolution, if you want to talk about species and all that. But I hope you're still with me. I'm still with me, but I don't talk about it to this depth often. And a lot of it is, it's the foundations of it for me are built on people that themselves use other people. Like, for instance, I'm not a mathematician. I cannot write chaos theory, but I can tell you all about it, and I know why it works. I can see it in a fractal, right? And I know what that means because I understand what the mathematician tells me, but I can't, just like I can't fix the car. You know, if the car breaks down, I don't have to suddenly figure out how to create an alternator. So you get it. So anyway, so let's assume then that foundationally consciousness is there. But if we do that, then we have to also assume, if it's foundational, that it is in everything above it too. So that means the cup is conscious. That means that the air is conscious. And the example when Chalmers talks about this, he has a funny example. He talks about even the proton or whatever, it has consciousness, but it's not like the example he gives. It's not like the proton's freaking out saying, all I do is move at the speed of light. I never have time to smell roses. That's funny, because that's not what it is. Like when we say a tree has consciousness, we're not saying that we talk to the tree like, hey tree, and the tree answers, yes, Steve. No, it's not like that at all. If anything, you might have a communication, but it wouldn't be talking. When we say talking, we turn it into people. We anthropomorphize the tree, right? And so, as if the tree can talk, because we talk. But anyway, we do that for understanding, and that's fine. Whatever. But if we then just assume that it has consciousness, then we don't also have to assume, since it is a different mechanical process altogether, that which produces a plant, that which produces an atom, that which produces a light bulb, all of it is different levels of this emergent thing, this repetition of processes that forms matter. It's all made out of matter, right? And so if that's the case, then they do all have consciousness. And so they just have it different, just like a dog cannot understand anything about anything that you do or that we do. Somebody I heard use this example lately. It might even be the same video. We like to think that our cat loves us, And yeah, there might be some energetic thing, or if you know, that's a cliche term, energetic there, but we are talking about energy because it's movement. If there is some kind of thing of it's an attachment. It is an attachment, and that's a scary word. Just get rid of the spirituality and the whole healing thing there for a second. But it is an attachment because there's an attraction there. You're attracted to that energy. You're following it. It is good energy. You love it, right? If that is there, yes, because they obviously care for their own kittens, right? They have that capacity. So in and of itself, that's a conscious experience the cat is having. So yes, the cat is conscious. But again, the cup, it's harder to understand that. How can the cup talk to you? You know, the cup, we have no way of understanding whether or not the cup knows it's a cup. In fact, I don't even know that you're real, really, think about it like that, because we all create our own reality. We cannot know that which what we've not experienced. We cannot know it fully. We only then have to believe something. We have to have faith. We have to have whatever. But the only things that we truly know are what we see. And for that matter, any moment, the only thing you see could be then, if you get really foundational, now if we're talking about reality, because reality would have to emerge from conscious experience, right? So if conscious and is foundational now in the universe, whatever, if consciousness now is alongside of matter, time, and space and magnetism thus creates the energy, the conscious experience goes forward. It's unique to each individual process as it goes. For us, the conscious experience is being alive. And I know I am Steve, you know, and you know you are who you are, and we believe we're talking right now, and all those things. That's all conscious experience. And so that's what I talk about when I'm talking about consciousness. That is what I mean by consciousness. Now, beyond that, why is it important? The reason I feel it's important is because of the work that I do for the last several years, and that's in, well, with my own personal health crisis, I had to reevaluate the way I was doing everything. And so I've worked with a lot of people in that similar capacity sense. And so what that really came down to was yes, no on everything. I had to have a demonstrable way of saying what is good for me now to live because I was terminal. If it is good, I will do it. If it is not, I won't. There's no opinion. It's a whatever. I have to come up with a way of doing that. And that's where David Hawkins came in with Power versus Force. He had a way with kinesiology that he connected a yes-no answer to anything that was connected from the mind-body experience. It connected it. You can see it was connected. Again, did not answer the hard question of consciousness of why human experience is important in the first place, but, or why it's necessary, why we have it, why the cup doesn't, for instance. If again, it's foundational now, if it's foundational that consciousness is in the universe at that point. Either way you look at it, it does happen, even if it is secondary. But again, nobody in science has addressed that fully. This is the space that we're at currently. What the space I'm speaking of right now is the tip of understanding, and there are only theories in this space. There is no further knowing as far as science is concerned, demonstrable. So that's all that. But why it's important to me was I was able to come up with a yes-no answer, and it was allowed myself to change my physical abilities to some degree in the way that I experience taste, in the way that I experience pain in my body. I was able to work that into a much more manageable way, we'll say. And so what that taught me was that there was an inherent value to a positive and negative experience if you look at it like that. And in Hawkins' book of Power and Force, that's how he talks about it. And so that was great. That came in at a time when I was submerged in shamanism, and so I was very much in the esoteric side of being open beyond the linear world in the first place. And then as the thing went on, I became, you know, in the clinical space, then science came in to some degree when it comes to drug and alcohol work, and so then I learned of these other kinds of scientific approaches in reality and consciousness itself. So that's pretty much all of that. The implications of that are pretty profound when you consider the fact that we can map consciousness now. We can map through energetic levels of experience the impact it has on one's life and one's choices, which makes it a reality to be able to do what we call in healing, digging down and going beneath the layers, because what you're referring to there is really what we also could call the shadow self. And so what we're talking about there is more of a subconscious mind, and it's tailored by different people, but what we're ultimately talking about here is a subconscious process, or something that is not available to us in consciousness, consciousness being awake, aware, right? you're unconscious, you're out cold. That's not subconscious. That's the brain is not working right. When you're asleep, you're subconscious. You're in your subconscious then. Unconscious, listen to me. So subconscious is you're still working, you're just not awake. Wake is conscious. And so you can see that also in the emergence of consciousness. When I talk about waking up in the morning, you literally build your reality before you. So when I say we create our reality, we do. We literally do. And at that foundational level down there, there's also lots of explanations for how that process works. And I find that a very fascinating space, and we could talk about that perhaps in another series. These series are going to be all about different ways that within that, what I just talked about, there's a lot of places you hang different tailored versions of treatments of consciousness. We're going to talk about treatments of consciousness in the traditions of both the Celtic and the Nordic world in some ways that we don't normally do. We're going to talk about also the role of sexuality in spirituality, and again, in ways that we don't do. I say we don't do. I'm not saying that I'm exclusive or anything, but I think we're going to visit some spaces that aren't talked about often. How's that? And then also one with a person in psychotherapy who has an enormous amount of experience over the last 40 years of being really on the radical edge of clinical work. And so he's been a big influence on my life, so we're going to talk about that. And then lastly, I do not have this person identified yet, but I want to talk to somebody about reality. But we sort of have to have a sort of understanding of some of these things that I already talked about to really get there, because otherwise we're going to be having different discussions, which is fine. But that again is not we're talking about consciousness in this sort of uniform manner of lattices within it, I guess you could say. And one treatment of reality within a foundational view of reality, I think would be nice. I've not experienced anybody that has a really compelling version of reality that, I mean, it's not saying they're not there. I just haven't seen this. So if that's you, DM me or whatever. I'd love to do that. So that's all I got. So there you go. And if you came in late, you're probably wondering what the hell I'm talking about. The beginning, I outlined what that is. And again, this is what I call my approach in my ultimate work as a job. I do counseling, you could say. But my real ongoing research is in foundational emergent consciousness. If we take it to the point of the accepted now theory that perhaps consciousness is foundational to the universe. That's pretty deep, I think. So, because really the implication here is that if you really think about it at that level, everything within our conscious experience is literally created by us. And that's a hard space to sit in for a lot of people, because what I mean by that is all of it. The idea that the universe even exists. The idea that God and shamans and Donald Trump and any of this, anything that the human mind can consciously conceive would be in human consciousness, which would be above that foundation, because it has to get to the point towards the human first. And when we're talking foundational, we're talking the very first, lowest zero, just above 0 point of matter, that one. And from there, all emerges with the other foundations of time and space, magnetism. If we put consciousness there, that then attaches everything to consciousness beyond that. But either way, if we get foundational at that point, it still means that when consciousness arrives in the human species coming up that sort of emergent process, then it didn't exist before that, so we made all that up. And I know that goes against a lot of things. I mean, religious implications there are profound. And why would you ask these questions? Well, maybe you wouldn't, but I do. And I know that it's a space that science right now is investigating, the few that are, and that they've got some very valid ways that they're looking at it. And there's a lot of people out there that are doing some really solid work to approach that. And there's more and more people from the spiritual side that are beginning to give credit now to the fact that science itself has evolved. It is no longer Newtonian dynamics over there. This is a quantum world, frankly, more educated, you could say, on the way that it actually works, the structure, than they're even given credit for, and perhaps the vast majority. And I'm not being judgmental. I'm just saying that I stand in that road between the two and I see both sides, and I see a lot on both sides, but I've seen the same stuff on this side that ends in this arbitrary point of the past. And I get it. We like to think of the past. That's a linear world. We create that, right? Remember that part? But in this other side now, they're actually trying to still go. They're still going. They're the ones actually evolving in that sense. When we say that we believe, and I don't want to piss anybody off. I'm not trying to do that. But if I say I don't believe in Shiva or Shakti or God or the devil or Mars or even I am, which is really a hard one to say, that's pushing it really far. That's pushing it really damn far. And so anybody that's even going to address those places is already in Looney Land. And Looney Land, I'm making that one up, Looney Land, the bizarre question, to get the answer to the hardest question that we can't answer. All of these other questions are small, as said in the video. I'm repeating that now. All of these other questions are relatively small when you can't answer the hard question of consciousness. Why is it happen? What is the necessity of it with the human animal, the human person, the human, whatever you want to call it, the humanness, however you want to phrase it, however it even got here. What is the value of that? We don't know that. Science can't tell us that. The esoteric gives us all kinds of wonderful reasons for it, and we love that. But none of that can be proven. Science, at least, is still trying. So I'll give them their credit there, and they are really learning at a fast pace. Things like AI alone, if they get a computer to fall in love with another computer, or if they get a computer that actually likes you, will you be able to turn it off? It's a weird question. If we upload ourselves into a machine and it acts just like us, is it conscious? Yeah, crazy question, but I'm glad people are answering it, because I think we should know before all of a sudden we have that. And I'm not saying it's scary, but what are we creating? And that's really, what are we creating? At least science is still creating. They're still going out and finding it out. And I dig it. I love that. So that's all I got. If you came in late, I would suggest highly that you watch the beginning to understand why, or not understand it, and to explain, let me explain why it is I'm talking about this. And the first of these sessions will be on Monday. It'll be with William Apple. I've got Jacqueline L. Robinson on Wednesday, and Larry Walton at some point during the week. And then Nina, my friend from Iceland, is going to be along talking about the Nordic tradition. That's going to be nice. And then I don't have that fifth person. So I need somebody to talk about reality. If you have any suggestions, let me know. That's all I got. Thanks for watching, and like and share, and all that. Have a great day. Oh, and stay safe. Stay safe. Bye.